The stars above Outpost Vega 9 shimmered like frozen embers, scattered across the dark sea of the cosmos. For centuries, humanity had looked up at those same stars from the cradle of Earth, once with wonder, then with ambition, and finally, with ownership. They had built cities on the moons of Saturn, carved mines into asteroids, and stretched their reach to distant suns. Humanity had become a whisper among galaxies. Captain Lara Voss stood on the edge of the Outpost's observation deck, her reflection caught between starlight and glass. The hum of the generators below echoed faintly, the only sound in the vast silence of space. Her eyes, tired but alert, watched the slow rotation of the nearby gas giant Orionis Prime. It was beautiful, and impossibly still. She tapped the comms panel on her wrist. "Lieutenant Kieran, status check," a soft voice replied. "All systems green, Captain. Long-range scanners show no anomalies. Routine night as always." Lara gave a small smile. "Routine? That's the word every soldier wants to hear and every commander should fear." Kieran chuckled faintly. "You say that every night, ma'am." "Because one night," she said, turning back toward the stars, "routine ends." The silence was broken 3 hours later. A pulse. Then another. The Outpost's early warning system flickered to life, crimson lights painting the corridors in alarm. Ilara's voice cut through the confusion, steady and clear. "Bridge crew to stations. Kieran, report. Unidentified contacts vectoring from the dark side of Orionis Prime. No known transponder codes. How many?" Kieran hesitated. "At least 20 ships. Possibly more. Configuration unknown." Lara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. "Put it on screen." The main holodisplay shimmered to life. At first, the contacts were blurs, shadows moving through sensor fog. Then shapes began to emerge. Sleek black vessels with a design no human engineer would ever craft. They moved with unsettling precision, weaving through asteroid debris like predators through tall grass. Ilara's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's not ours," Kieran swallowed. "No heat signatures. No visible communication. They're just coming straight for us. Sound the alert. All hands prepare for contact. And patch me through to Central Command." The message never got through. Within minutes, the first blast hit. A beam of blinding blue light that tore through Vega 9's communication array, leaving a bloom of molten metal and silence in its wake. The entire outpost shuddered. Consoles sparked. The artificial gravity flickered for a heartbeat. Lara grabbed the railing to steady herself. "Damage report!" "Deck 3 breached. Fire suppression engaged. External comms are offline." Kieran's voice trembled now. Lara clenched her jaw. "All personnel, battle stations." "We're under attack." Outside, the alien ships moved closer, black as obsidian, glowing faintly with lines of silver across their hulls. No insignias. No visible cockpits. They didn't fire again immediately. They circled, studying, watching, like hunters testing the strength of their prey. Lara stared at them through the viewport, her heart pounding. "What do they want?" Kieran looked at her, eyes wide. "Do we try to talk to them?" Ilara's reply was cold steel. "They've already spoken." Hours passed in chaos. The outpost fought back. Railguns fired into the void. Missiles streaked toward the enemy, and for a brief moment humanity's defiance burned bright in the darkness. But the alien ships moved like ghosts. They anticipated every move. Every strike was met with silence, and then retaliation. By dawn cycle, Vega 9 was burning. The last transmission sent from the outpost was simple, encoded in desperation and courage. Ilara's voice carried through the static to the outer colonies. "Unknown hostile fleet. Not human. Vega 9 falling. Tell Earth." The signal cut off mid-sentence. When the message finally reached the Sol network, it carried only fragments of her words. But those fragments would ignite the fury of a species that refused to die quietly. For humanity had faced extinction before, and learned how to burn, brighter than the stars that tried to swallow them. And somewhere, beyond the ashes of Vega 9, the unknown ships turned toward their next target. The silence before dawn had ended. The stars above Earth burned colder that night. News of Vega 9's fall spread faster than light across the colonies. A wave of disbelief, then silence, then fury. Within 24 hours, Humanity had named their enemy, the Seraphim, as the analysts called them, not angels of heaven but ghosts of fire. No transmissions, no demands, no mercy. They had come and vanished, leaving nothing but drifting wreckage and unanswered questions. Admiral Jonas Hale, commander of the Sol Defense Fleet, stared at the final recording from Vega 9. The static-riddled image of Captain Lara Voss flickered across the screen. Her voice, fractured, still steady, unknown hostile fleet, not human, Vega 9 falling, tell Earth, and then silence. Jonas closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the calm had hardened into something cold and unyielding. Get me the High Council. It's time the Seraphim learned what humanity does when cornered. In the war room beneath the Atlantic Command Dome, holograms shimmered into being, the faces of generals, scientists and governors from across the system, Mars, Luna, Titan, Europa, and the scattered frontier worlds. The Seraphim hit Vega 9 without warning. Jonas began, voice deep and deliberate. They cut through our defenses like glass. We lost 300 men and women before we even knew who we were fighting. Governor Amira Chen leaned forward. What do we know about them? Do we have visuals? Patterns? Only fragments, replied Dr. Malik Reese, the lead xenotechnologist. Their ships emit no radiation we can track. Their weapons seem to bend light itself. It's like they erase energy rather than release it. Jonas slammed a hand on the table. Then we'll learn how to burn what can't be seen. A silence fell. Grim. Charged. We've survived extinction before. Jonas continued. The plague wars, the AI collapse. We crawled through ashes and built ourselves again. This time will be no different. 2 weeks later, the Iron Dawn rose from Earth's orbit, a fleet built not for exploration, but vengeance. Titan-class carriers, forged from lunar steel. Spear-class destroyers, sleek and silent. The fleet moved like a storm gathering strength. Among the new recruits aboard the destroyer Aegis, Lieutenant Lara Keene fastened her combat harness, her hands trembling slightly. She had been a communications officer on Vega 9 once, before being reassigned a month before the attack. She had known Lara Voss. The memory haunted her. When the news reached her post, she had stared at the screen for hours, unable to move. Now she had a purpose again. Revenge was not a word the fleet used, but every heartbeat aboard the Aegis throbbed with it. Captain Ronan Tarek, her commanding officer, walked through the bridge, voice crisp and unyielding. We're not here to die heroes, he said. We're here to make sure no one else has to. The crew nodded silently. Lara whispered under her breath. For Vega 9. The first engagement came sooner than anyone expected. 3 Seraphim ships appeared near the mining colonies of Erebus Belt. Silent, swift and precise, just as before. But this time humanity was waiting. Targets locked, reported Lara. Hands steady now. All ships ready to fire on command. Ronan gave a single nod. On my mark. The alien ships glided forward, their hulls glimmering with faint silver lines. The Aegis's sensors screamed in protest, energy readings spiking, reality itself seeming to shimmer around them. Mark. Humanity struck first. The vacuum of space lit with fury. Plasma rounds. Kinetic slugs and railgun bursts collided into the alien vessels. One Seraphim ship shuddered under impact, its hull fracturing like cracked glass. Then for the first time since Vega 9, something extraordinary happened. The alien ship exploded. For a heartbeat, the bridge went silent. Then the room erupted. They can bleed! Someone shouted. Ronan's voice cut through the noise. Then we'll make them remember what pain feels like. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining Seraphim ships retaliated. Beams of bending light slashed across the fleet. 2 destroyers vanished in seconds, their hulls dissolving into drifting shards. Lara's console flared with warnings. Shields failing. We can't hold this line. Fall back to formation beta, Ronan ordered. Cover the Iron Dawn's retreat. The Aegis shuddered as debris rained against its armor. Fire licked through the corridors. Through the chaos, Lara's thoughts burned with one phrase. They're not invincible. And that spark, that small, defiant truth, spread like wildfire across the fleet. When the smoke cleared, one Seraphim ship was gone. Humanity had paid dearly, but they had drawn first blood. In the silence that followed, Jonas Hale watched the reports pour in. For the first time in the campaign, his lips curved into a faint, grim smile. "They thought we would kneel," he murmured. "They don't understand us at all." Above the scarred world of Erebus, the Iron Dawn regrouped, battered, burning, but unbroken, and far beyond. In the cold dark of another galaxy, the Seraphim fleet stirred. They had been challenged. The storm was only beginning. The stars looked different after a battle. They weren't distant or serene anymore. They were reminders. Tiny, unblinking witnesses to everything lost. In the weeks following the Erebus Belt engagement, humanity rebuilt, rearmed, and remembered. Across every colony, names of the fallen were carved into walls of steel and stone. On Earth, in the gardens above the Atlantic Dome, families left lights burning for those who never came home. Admiral Jonas Hale stood there one evening, alone among the flickering candles. The air smelled faintly of rain and salt, the same air he'd breathed as a boy, back when Earth had still been peaceful. He watched the flames tremble and whispered to the wind, "You didn't die in vain." Behind him, a voice spoke softly. "Sir, the council is waiting." Jonas turned to see Lara Keene standing at attention, her uniform crisp, her face lined with exhaustion. She had been reassigned to Earth as a tactical officer, one of the few survivors of Aegis. "They can wait another minute," he said quietly. "You lost friends too." Lara hesitated, then stepped closer, looking out over the sea of lights. "We all did, sir. But the fleet's stronger now. The engineers on Luna have finished the new shield prototypes. We're ready." Jonas nodded slowly. "Ready isn't enough anymore," she frowned. "What do you mean?" He turned, eyes dark as the ocean beneath them. "We can't just defend, Lieutenant. We need to take the fight to them, find where they came from, and end it there." The following week, the Helios Directive was born, a joint operation between Earth Command Mars and the outer colonies. Humanity's first offensive beyond known space. At its heart was a single, desperate idea. Track the quantum residue left by Seraphim drives and follow it to their homeworld. If they could strike the source, maybe, just maybe, the war could end before it consumed everything. Captain Ronan Tarek was among those chosen to lead the mission. His ship Aegis II, freshly commissioned, gleamed beneath the orbiting shipyards of Mars. He ran his fingers along the polished hull before boarding, the weight of loss and duty pressing heavy on his chest. As he stepped onto the bridge, he saw Lara waiting for him, transferred once more to his command. She saluted sharply. "Permission to come aboard, Captain." Ronan allowed himself the smallest smile. "You already know I can't do this without you, Lieutenant," she smiled back faintly. "Then let's bring them home some justice." The fleet departed under a silent sky. No grand speeches, no fanfare, just determination. Every pilot, engineer, and soldier aboard knew what was at stake. If the Seraphim found Earth before they found the Seraphim world, everything would burn. Days turned to weeks as the fleet chased faint trails through the void, flickering echoes of light bent by alien technology. The deeper they went, the stranger the universe became. Nebulas pulsed with colors no human eye had ever named. Gravity fields twisted like mirages. And then, one day, the reading spiked. "Captain, we've got something," Lara said, her voice trembling between awe and fear. "Massive energy signature ahead." "This might be it," Ronan leaned forward. "Helm, bring us in slow." The view screen filled with light and then shape, a planet wreathed in silver storms. Metallic rings spiraled around it like shards of a broken crown. At its center pulsed an eerie glow like a heartbeat. "My God," Lara whispered. "Is that their home?" The sensors began to crackle and distort. The planet was radiating something that bent signals light, even time itself. Ronan's voice was steady. "Record everything. Send what you can back to command." Then the alarm screamed. The Seraphim were waiting. Dozens of ships emerged from the storm, their black hulls glistening like oil in the light of their dying sun. But this time humanity didn't flinch. "All ships defensive formation," Ronan commanded. "Let them come." The first salvo hit, and for the first time the new Luna-made shields held. Plasma bursts scattered harmlessly across glowing barriers of light. Humanity answered with thunder. Missiles streaked across the darkness. Laser cannons cut through the void. 2 Seraphim vessels fell, burning bright. Lara's hands flew over the controls, her heart pounding. "Captain, the shield's holding. We can win this." Ronan's eyes narrowed. Then we don't stop until we do. Hours passed in a blur of fury and light. By the time the storm cleared, 5 human ships were gone, but the Seraphim defense fleet was shattered. Their planet hung exposed, its surface glowing with unnatural radiance. Jonas Hale's voice came through the comms from Earth Command. "You've done it, Aegis II. Now finish it." Ronan looked at Lara. "Prepare the strike packages." Lara hesitated. "Sir, if we do this, there's no going back. That planet, it's alive. I can feel it." Ronan met her gaze, his voice quiet, resolute. "Neither are we, but we don't have a choice." As the fleet prepared for the final assault, every human aboard knew this was more than vengeance. It was survival. The right to exist in a universe that seemed determined to erase them. And somewhere deep within the storming heart of the Seraphim world, something ancient stirred, watching humanity with something that might have been fear. The Seraphim world hung before the fleet like a dark miracle, a vast orb of molten silver and storming clouds, glowing faintly from within as though it breathed. The space around it pulsed, distorting sensors and light alike, bending the universe to its will. Captain Ronan Tarek stood on the bridge of the Aegis II, his face lit by the eerie shimmer of the alien planet. "That's it," he said softly. "The heart of the storm?" Lieutenant Lara Keene swallowed hard. "It's beautiful. And wrong," he nodded once. "Prepare the strike teams. We end it tonight." In the command center on Earth, Admiral Jonas Hale watched the live feed, every muscle tense. The faces around him, officers, scientists, and civiliandom, were silent. Even the hum of the consoles seemed subdued. "Transmission lag is 7 minutes," an officer said quietly. "We won't see the battle in real time." Jonas didn't look away from the screen. "Then let's hope those 7 minutes don't decide the fate of everything we've built." Back aboard the Aegis II, the fleet fanned out across the alien skies. Missiles armed, railguns charged. Orbital bombardment protocols aligned with chilling precision. But before the first strike could launch, the planet moved. The storms parted, and from the heart of that glowing world, something vast began to rise. Lara's eyes widened. "Captain, that's not a structure." It wasn't. A colossal shape emerged from the clouds, dwarfing mountains, swallowing the horizon. A ship, or something beyond that word. Miles long, glowing with rivers of molten light that coursed through its hull. Its design defied logic, shifting and reshaping as it rose. The Seraphim had a flagship. Ronan exhaled slowly. "All units concentrate fire. Bring it down." The sky erupted. Beams of light and plasma lanced through the darkness. The Aegis II's cannons thundered. Human ships darted and weaved, fighting like sparks against a hurricane. The Seraphim's retaliation came swift. Blinding torrents of white fire that melted armor and vaporized ships whole. The fleet screamed through chaos, every second paid for in lives. Lara's hands danced across controls, rerouting power, managing damage. "We've lost the Vanguard and Solstice. Shields at 30%. "Keep firing," Ronan shouted. "We're not backing down." The enemy flagship turned toward them, and the void itself seemed to bend. Energy surged, reality trembling. The Seraphim unleashed a single blast, and half the human formation disappeared in a silent flare of light. Lara gasped. "Captain!" "I see it." Ronan's knuckles were white on the command rail. "Target their ventral core. It's pulsing. There's a weakness." Lara's eyes flicked across the readouts. "Range locked. Coordinates set. Then hit it." The Aegis II roared. Missiles streaked across the void, piercing through silver clouds and shattering the alien armor. For a moment, the massive ship faltered. A blinding explosion tore through its underbelly, scattering molten debris into orbit. The crew erupted in cries of triumph, but it was short-lived. The alien flagship wasn't dying. It was changing. Its light grew brighter, expanding outward in pulses. The surface rippled like liquid metal, and from its core, waves of energy cascaded outward. Ships caught in the wave crumbled like sand. "Evacuate the lower decks," Ronan barked. "Lara, what's happening?" Her voice shook. "It's absorbing energy, including our own weapons fire. The more we hit it, the stronger it gets." Ronan froze, realization dawning. "It's feeding off us." Thousands of kilometers away, Admiral Jonas Hale watched the feed go static. The room fell silent. Connection lost. An operator whispered. Jonas turned slowly toward the science division. "Tell me you have something." Dr. Malik Reese hesitated. The Seraphim's energy core isn't technological, sir. It's organic and living. That entire planet may be a sentient being. Jonas's jaw tightened. Then it's time we remind it what humanity does when something tries to erase us. He straightened, his voice hard as iron. Authorize the Helios Protocol. Gasps rippled through the room. Sir, that's an extinction-level weapon, one of the officers protested. It'll burn half their system. Then we burn it, Jonas said. We warned the stars once. They didn't listen. Back on the Aegis II, the order came through. Lara read it in silence, her heart twisting. Helios? Ronan met her gaze. The Sunfire warhead. Command's giving us permission to deploy it, she hesitated. If we fire that, Captain, nothing will survive, not them. Not us. Ronan looked at the burning horizon beyond the viewport, the alien world glowing brighter as if mocking them. He smiled sadly. Then let's make sure the universe remembers why humanity should never be underestimated. As the Aegis II dove toward the heart of the alien storms, every human ship followed. Engines flared like dying suns. Voices cried over comms, not in fear but in defiance. Lara's hands trembled over the activation key. Ronan's voice was calm. Do it. And humanity's fire roared across the heavens. Light consumed everything. The Seraphim world erupted, a silent sun born in the dark, tearing through the void with blinding brilliance. Waves of energy cascaded outward, engulfing ships, storms, and stars. From Earth 7 minutes later, the night sky shimmered, and one more constellation was gone. For the first time in history, the stars looked wounded. Where the Seraphim world had once burned in the distant sky, there was now only a scar, a vast empty void where light itself seemed afraid to return. The Helios warhead had done what it was built to do. It erased, but in doing so it had nearly erased them. In the cold silence beyond that vanished sun, fragments of humanity drifted, broken ships, shattered hulls, and the faint whispers of comms lost to static. Amid the wreckage, a single transmission crackled faintly across the void. This is Captain Ronan Tarek. Aegis II still intact. Survivors on board, we're alive. The voice was hoarse, the breath between words shallow. Inside what remained of the Aegis II, emergency lights flickered over a scene of chaos. Panels torn apart. Smoke drifting like ghostly ribbons. The hum of failing engines was the only heartbeat left. Lieutenant Lara Keene opened her eyes to red light and pain. Her head throbbed, her uniform scorched. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. She turned weakly toward the sound of Ronan's voice. He was slumped against the command rail, blood staining his sleeve, but his eyes were open. Steady, unbroken. Captain, she whispered. He managed a faint smile. Still here, Lieutenant. What? What happened? The Helios worked. Their planet's gone. So is half the fleet. Lara swallowed, her voice trembling. And us? Adrift. Power's down to 10%. Long-range comms are fried. She stared out through the cracked viewport. The space beyond was empty. No stars, no ships. Just the faint curling residue of light that refused to fade. Did we win? She asked softly. Ronan's eyes followed hers into that emptiness. We survived. That has to count for something. 3 days passed before the rescue came. A Martian recon frigate, Eidolon, found their distress beacon floating in the remains of the Helios debris field. When the survivors were brought aboard, only 72 of the Aegis II's original crew of 600 remained. Ronan stood on the deck of the Eidolon as it turned toward home, the weight of it pressing down like a mountain. Lara joined him silent. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, she said, "They'll call us heroes." He shook his head. "They'll call it victory. But this isn't victory. This is what happens when the universe pushes us too far." Her eyes softened. Then maybe it needed to see what we're capable of. Back on Earth, the announcement came with no fanfare, no celebration. Admiral Jonas Hale stood before the Global Council, his uniform immaculate, his face hollow. Behind him, a holographic projection of the Seraphim system glowed briefly before collapsing into darkness. "The Seraphim homeworld has been destroyed," he said simply. "The fleet succeeded. Humanity is safe, and for now, no one spoke." The silence of survival hung heavy. A counselor finally whispered, "At what cost, Admiral?" Jonas's gaze hardened. at the cost required. He stepped down from the podium and walked out, the weight of his words echoing in every corner of the hall. Outside, the skies over Earth were filled with streaks of light, ships returning home, some in triumph, others in mourning. Families gathered to welcome what was left of their loved ones, and for the first time in generations, the people of Earth looked up not with fear, but with awe and guilt. Lara found herself standing in those same gardens where Jonas Hale had once stood, the gardens of remembrance. She placed her hand on the cold metal wall where the names of the fallen were engraved. There were so many, too many, she whispered to one name in particular, Ilara Voss. "We did it, Captain. You were right. Routine ends." Behind her, footsteps approached. Ronan stopped beside her, his arm in a sling, his eyes tired but bright. "Command's offering us retirement," he said quietly, "or reassignment to the reconstruction fleet." Lara gave a faint, almost wistful smile. "You're going back out there, aren't you?" He nodded. "Someone has to make sure this doesn't happen again." She looked out over the horizon where the evening light bled into the clouds. "Do you think they're all gone?" "The Seraphim?" Ronan hesitated. "We destroyed their world. But something that vast, something that could shape reality itself, I don't think it ends that easily." She nodded slowly. "Then we'll be ready." As the night fell, the lights of the city shimmered below them. Humanity had survived another storm, and the cost would echo for centuries. But from that grief, something unbreakable had taken root. A new generation would grow under the scarred sky, looking up at the stars not as conquerors nor as victims, but as witnesses, aware of what it meant to be human. And somewhere, beyond the silent void where the Seraphim once reigned, a faint pulse flickered. Not dead. Not gone. Watching. Waiting. The war was over. But history, as always, was patient. 10 years had passed since the day the Seraphim world turned to ash. A decade since the fire that lit the heavens and nearly consumed them all. In those years, humanity rebuilt. The Aegis Initiative became a symbol of unity, a promise that the scattered colonies and fractured nations of humankind would never again face the void alone. Cities on Mars thrived beneath their red domes. Earth's skies, once scarred by warships, now shimmered with commerce and light. The colonies on Titan and Europa sang songs of peace through the endless dark. And yet, the stars remained silent, too silent. Captain Lara Keene stood in the observation lounge of Odyssey Station, the crown jewel of the new frontier. Her reflection stared back at her through glass, framed by the slow rotation of a distant nebula. 10 years hadn't softened her resolve. Though the scars beneath her uniform had faded to pale lines, she had accepted a post away from battle, an instructor, a strategist. But she had never stopped listening to the dark. Every night she still monitored the void for anomalies. Old habits refused to die. She lifted her cup of tea, the steam rising into the cool air. "Peace," she murmured. "We begged for it, and now it feels wrong." Behind her, the door hissed open. Admiral Ronan Tarek stepped through, older now, streaks of silver in his hair but the same fierce light in his eyes. "You still watching the dark?" he asked. Lara smiled faintly. "Someone has to. You taught me that." Ronan joined her by the viewport. Together they looked out into the vast, swirling cosmos. "The Reconstruction Council wants to decommission the last defense fleets," he said quietly. "They think we've earned our peace." Lara's gaze didn't move. "Peace is never earned. It's rented," Ronan chuckled softly. "That sounds like something Jonas Hale would have said." She turned toward him. "How is he?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Gone last winter, quietly in his sleep. He spent his final years near the Atlantic Dome. Said he wanted to watch the sunrise again." Lara lowered her eyes. "He deserved that." They stood in silence for a long moment, the hum of the station filling the space between them. Then the console on Lara's wrist flickered. A soft tone, a pulse faint but distinct. Ronan's head turned sharply. "What was that?" She tapped the screen, frowning. "Unregistered signal. Deep space. It's repeating every 9 seconds." The pattern appeared, rhythmic, haunting. 9 pulses. Pause. 3 more. Pause. Then silence. Her heart froze. "That's not random." Hours later, the signal was confirmed by half a dozen observatories. It came from the edge of known space, the outer rim where even the bravest exploration fleets had never gone. The coordinates matched nothing. No star, no debris field, just empty void, except now. It wasn't empty. At the unified command on Earth, analysts and linguists tried to decipher the pulses. The message resisted translation, but something in the data chilled everyone who heard it. It wasn't mechanical. It was biological. The pulse carried organic resonance, the kind found in living tissue. Ronan stared at the readings on the screen. They survived. Lara shook her head. Impossible. We burned their world to glass. He looked at her, his voice steady and low. Then we didn't burn it deep enough. Days turned into sleepless nights. The signal grew stronger. Every cycle it changed slightly, adapting, learning. The tone became clearer, the intervals more deliberate. At last, the computers translated a single phrase, not in words, but in rhythm and sound, a pulse that formed a pattern unmistakably human. You are not alone. The room went silent. Lara whispered, "They're speaking to us." Ronan stared at the dark beyond the stars. "No, they're answering us." The council convened an emergency session. Some argued for diplomacy, others demanded preemptive strike fleets. Fear bled through every chamber and colony. Lara stood before them, hands steady. "We can't assume hostility. We destroyed their world. If something survived, it might not come for vengeance. It might just want to live." A counselor snapped, "And if you're wrong?" Lara met his gaze. "Then we'll do what we always do. We'll endure." That night she returned to the observation deck, alone again. The nebula shimmered outside, painting her reflection in shifting hues of blue and silver. Her comm link chimed softly, an old frequency, one she hadn't used in years. The code belonged to the Aegis II, long since dismantled. She froze. "Ronan?" Static. Then a voice, faint, distorted, almost human. "We remember the fire. We remember your light." The channel went dead. Lara's breath caught. She stared into the endless dark, her heart thundering. For a long time she said nothing. Then softly, as if speaking to ghosts, "Then remember this too. We're still here." Far beyond the colonies, in the cold cradle of the void, something vast stirred. Fragments of molten silver drifted together, pulsing like the first beats of a reborn heart. And across the silent expanse the echo came again, faint, rhythmic, patient. The Seraphim were not finished. They were beginning again. The signal had become a song. Every hour, it grew clearer, a haunting rhythm that resonated through every receiver from Mars to Titan. The tone was no longer static. It carried texture, layers, meaning. It wasn't just a message. It was a voice, and humanity, for all its strength, trembled. Across the colonies, people gathered to listen. In schools, children pressed their ears to speakers. In the great domes of Mars, workers paused mid-labor. On Earth, even the ocean seemed to hush as the sound passed through the skies. It wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It was remembering. Captain Lara Keene stood once again on the command deck of a ship. Not a destroyer this time, but the flagship of peace, the Unity. 10 years of fragile hope had led her here. Back among the stars she had once sworn to never face again. And beside her stood Admiral Ronan Tarek, his eyes steady on the holographic projection of the Seraphim signal. "They're rebuilding," he said softly, "somewhere beyond the Veil Nebula. We've tracked energy distortions consistent with Seraphim bioarchitecture." Lara's voice was calm but heavy. "We have two choices, Admiral. We can go to them or wait for them to come to us." He smiled faintly. "You already know what we'll do," she nodded. "Then let's make this count." 3 weeks later, the Unity and her escort fleet crossed the threshold of known space. The stars here burned faint and cold. The nebula ahead shimmered like a veil of liquid glass, swirling with silver threads, echoes of the same light that once destroyed Vega 9. Lara stared into it, feeling the same chill she had known that night so long ago. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Ronan nodded slowly. "Every ending is." The ships advanced. As they entered the nebula, the silence grew thick, a pressure, almost like a heartbeat. Then came the lights. Tiny specks at first scattered among the fog, then hundreds, then thousands. They weren't ships, and not yet. They were fragments, cells of living metal, drifting, merging. The Seraphim were rebuilding not just vessels but themselves, and then through the mist a shape emerged, small, delicate, almost human in outline. Lara's breath caught. "Admiral, is that—" "Yes," Ronan said quietly. "They're trying to speak." The figure appeared on the main screen. It was translucent, woven from silver light, its face featureless yet strangely expressive. When it spoke, its voice carried through every system on every ship, calm, melodic, and old beyond comprehension. "You burned our sky," it said, "yet you left a fragment of your fire behind." Lara took a step forward. "We defended our people. You struck first." "We sought to end what we feared," the being replied. "You fear the dark." "We feared your hunger for it." Ronan's voice was low. "Then maybe we're not so different." There was a long pause. The light around the figure dimmed, pulsing softly. "We have changed," it said finally. "Death taught us. Fire taught us. Now we seek not conquest, but balance." Lara exchanged a glance with Ronan. "And if we refuse that balance?" The Seraphim being looked up, and for the first time something like sadness crossed its form. "Then we will vanish again. But remember, human, your fire consumes. Even your peace burns." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. No one moved. Finally, Lara exhaled. "They're afraid of us." Ronan nodded slowly. "Maybe they should be." He turned toward the crew. "Stand down weapons. Record everything. We're not going to repeat the mistakes of Vega 9. The fleet lingered on the edge of the nebula for hours, exchanging cautious signals. Not of war, but of learning. Patterns of light. Rhythms of sound. Two species once forged in violence, now circling the possibility of something greater. And when the Seraphim finally drifted back into the mist, they left behind a single pulse, repeating endlessly in human frequency, "We will remember your light." Lara closed her eyes, listening. "Maybe that's all the peace we'll ever get." Ronan smiled softly. "Then let's make sure we deserve it." Years later, people would tell stories about that day, the day when the monsters of the void reached out not with claws, but with memory. Humanity, for the first time, didn't answer with fire. They answered with restraint. In the classrooms of Earth, children would trace the silver constellations where the Seraphim world once shone and whisper, "They're still out there." And somewhere in the archives of the Unity, a recording would play, the soft pulse of alien song, echoing through the halls like a heartbeat. Lara Keene grew old beneath those stars. She never saw war again, but every night she would walk to the observation deck, gaze into the deep and whisper a promise that had carried humanity through every shadow. "Whatever waits out there," she would say, "we'll face it, together." And in the farthest reach of the cosmos, beyond nebula and silence, a faint echo would always answer. A heartbeat, patient and eternal, the light of two civilizations forever bound by fire.